I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The dining room had already been prepared. The chairs were aligned, the silverware was polished, and senior members of the royal family were moments away from taking their places. Then King Charles looked toward the palace entrance and saw a face he had not expected to see. Within seconds, the monarch made a decision that stunned the household. The private family lunch was cancelled. The doors were closed, and Camilla was left demanding an explanation. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles had wanted the gathering to calm a family under strain. Queen Camilla, Prince William, Catherine, and Princess Anne had been invited because the lunch was meant to restore unity, not test it. A private family lunch was an informal meal without public duties, but this one carried unusual weight. One peaceful afternoon could prove the household still stood together before everyone watching closely. Aides checked the approved guest list near the entrance while Charles waited beside the dining room doorway. The king looked uneasy. William noticed his father watching the corridor instead of greeting guests, and the prince sensed something was wrong. Then Tom Parker Bowles appeared at the door. Charles froze. Camilla's son was not on the approved list, and the monarch knew his arrival was no harmless mistake. He lowered his voice and told an aide, "No one enters, and the lunch does not proceed." William heard every word. The future king saw the pain behind the command, because Charles was refusing entry to someone tied to his wife. Camilla moved toward her husband in disbelief. She insisted Tom had only come for a brief visit and asked why an entire meal had to be destroyed over his arrival. Charles refused to argue publicly. He turned away, leaving the queen beside untouched place settings while Anne watched her struggle between anger and humiliation. The closed door changed everything. Charles had recently issued a private instruction requiring his approval before any member of Camilla's extended family could attend private palace gatherings. That instruction mattered because these meetings involved sensitive discussions about security, succession, and influence. Tom's arrival looked like a deliberate challenge to an order Charles had already made clear. An aide quietly shut the entrance while Tom remained outside. Camilla stayed inside, but her family no longer possessed automatic access to the palace's private rooms. William watched her follow Charles into the corridor. The meal had been abandoned, but the real confrontation was only beginning because everyone understood that the king had not simply rejected a guest. He had drawn a line through his own marriage. To the palace staff, the incident appeared to be a dispute over protocol. To Charles and Camilla, it was something far more painful. Standing between them was not merely an uninvited visitor, but a son, a husband, a royal household, and years of carefully avoided resentment. As the abandoned dining room fell silent, each person involved understood that the king's decision had transformed a private family bond into a public test of loyalty. Camilla carried that pain into the sitting room. Tom Parker Bowles was not simply a guest to her. He was part of the life she had known before royal schedules, guarded entrances, and the constant judgment that followed her relationship with Charles. Her children represented the part of her identity that existed before the crown. The institution built around the monarch and the duties surrounding him began deciding where family ended and royal responsibility began. Charles had shown warmth toward Tom before. He had shared private meals with him, spoken kindly to him, and treated him with respect during ordinary family occasions. But the king had become more careful whenever a gathering involved succession, money, palace strategy, or the future direction of the monarchy. Those meetings shaped who held influence around William and what the next reign would inherit. For Charles, that boundary could no longer remain blurred. Camilla faced him with controlled anger. She asked why he had embarrassed her son in front of the household, and why a short visit had been treated like a threat. Her voice stayed low, but her hands tightened around the back of a chair. She was not only defending Tom, she was defending the life she feared the palace was slowly pushing aside. Charles did not soften. He told her the lunch concerned the crown and its immediate responsibilities, not the wider family. The words landed heavily. Camilla heard more than a rule. She heard rejection. She heard that Tom, and perhaps everything she had brought into the marriage, would always remain outside the innermost royal circle. William waited beyond the door with concern and quiet resolve. The prince remembered earlier gatherings where personal guests had drifted too close to discussions meant for senior royals alone. He understood why his father had acted, yet he also knew the decision had wounded Camilla deeply. Still, he refused to interfere until Charles asked him to enter. Catherine had already noticed something troubling. Earlier that morning, she had seen Tom's name written on an informal seating suggestion, even though it never appeared on the approved list. The princess said nothing at first, but she began wondering who had added it and whether Camilla had known. Princess Anne then spoke privately to William. She told him Charles had feared for days that someone might test his authority during the lunch. The king had expected pressure, though perhaps not at the doorway. Camilla finally asked the question everyone had avoided. Would Charles have canceled the gathering if the unexpected guest had belonged to William's side of the family? That question pierced the silence, but its answer lay in an earlier incident, one that had convinced Charles the palace doorway could no longer remain open, simply because someone was called family. The canceled lunch did not begin at the palace entrance. Its true origin lay several weeks earlier, during a private dinner at Clarence's house where a conversation crossed a boundary Charles could no longer ignore. Only 5 people were seated at the table that evening, and no announcement followed. Yet before the night ended, the king had quietly pushed back his chair, looked directly at Camilla's son, and realized that family access had begun to carry political consequences. Charles had been trying to narrow the monarchy's private decision-making circle. Working royals, meaning family members who officially carried out duties for the crown, would remain involved in sensitive discussions. Others would not. The change mattered because those conversations touched security, succession, money, and the shape of William's future reign. One careless voice could turn a family exchange into a struggle over influence. Camilla resisted that growing separation. She believed Tom Parker Bowles brought warmth into a household that had become formal, guarded, and emotionally distant. To the Queen, including her son did not weaken the monarchy. It reminded everyone that behind the titles were parents, children, and relationships that existed long before palace rules began controlling them. The point of no return came during that private dinner 3 weeks earlier. Tom questioned William's plan to reduce access for non-working relatives at royal residences. He then suggested that Camilla should be free to invite her own children without seeking the prince's approval. William answered calmly. The future king said the policy concerned security and official boundaries, not affection. Tom pushed back his chair and replied that the palace seemed to apply different rules depending on which side of the family was asking. Charles stopped eating. He placed his fork beside the plate and told Tom that no guest should challenge the heir's authority during a strategic discussion. The king's warning carried unusual force, because the heir was not merely his son. William was the person expected to inherit the crown, and the responsibilities attached to it. Camilla defended Tom immediately. She told Charles that her son had only voiced what others were too frightened to say. The Queen insisted the palace was creating one family inside the royal circle, and another outside it. Her words did not calm the room. They confirmed the division. Later that evening, Charles met Princess Anne alone. During their private conversation, he admitted the dinner had exposed how easily an informal family occasion could become a direct challenge to William's position. Anne warned him that unclear boundaries would only invite another test. The king acted quietly. He issued a private instruction requiring his personal approval before Camilla's relatives could attend lunches involving senior royals. The order was meant to remain invisible unless someone ignored it. Then the morning of the palace lunch arrived. Tom's name was absent from the approved list, yet he appeared at the entrance at precisely the moment everyone was preparing to sit down. Someone had misunderstood Charles's instruction, or deliberately tested it. When the king finally turned toward Camilla, he was ready to learn which possibility was true. The palace corridor was narrow, private, and completely silent when Charles finally faced Camilla. No photographers were present. No advisors stood between them. The abandoned lunch waited behind one closed door, while her son remained beyond another. Then the king asked 4 words that changed the argument entirely. "Did you invite him?" Camilla's hesitation lasted only a moment, but to Charles, that moment was longer and more revealing than any confession. Charles had already dismissed the aides. William, Catherine, and Princess Anne had been told to remain elsewhere while he spoke to his wife alone. The king understood that the argument could no longer be treated as a simple family disagreement. Palace access meant permission to enter private royal spaces, and that permission carried real weight whenever security, succession, or future authority was involved. Camilla tried to stay composed. She said Tom knew the lunch was taking place, and had only wanted to see her. The queen avoided the question, and Charles noticed immediately. He did not raise his voice. That restraint made every word heavier, because she could hear that he had already imagined the answer. "Did you invite him?" the monarch asked again. Camilla finally admitted that she had told her son he could stop by. She believed Charles would not turn him away once he reached the door. Her voice tightened as she explained that Tom was family, not a threat. But the admission changed everything. She had counted on the pain of public refusal to force the king into reversing a private order. Charles removed his glasses and placed them slowly on a side table. He told her that using the doorway to force his consent was not affection. It was pressure. The queen flinched, but she did not retreat. She accused him of allowing William to build a smaller royal circle, where anyone outside the prince's chosen group could be pushed aside. Charles did not deny that his son had supported tighter boundaries. The king said William believed personal loyalty could not be allowed to weaken security or decision-making. Camilla heard that as confirmation. To her, the future king was not protecting the palace. He was deciding which family mattered. Then Charles disclosed something worse through the seating note Catherine had seen that morning. Tom's name had been added by hand even though it never appeared on the approved guest list. The monarch asked whether Camilla had instructed a staff member to alter the arrangement. Camilla denied touching the official list. She insisted she had only told Tom to come, not ordered anyone to change the seating. Her answer left a darker question hanging between them. Who had tried to make his presence look authorist? Outside the corridor, William learned that his name had entered the argument. The prince did not step away. He prepared to face his father, knowing the cancelled lunch had become a struggle over who truly controlled the palace. Camilla had admitted arranging the visit, but she had also placed William at the center of the dispute, and the next decision would reveal whether Charles stood beside his wife or behind the future king. Royal authority rarely arrives with raised voices. More often, it appears through a locked door, a revised instruction, or a sentence spoken so calmly that no one dares misunderstand it. After confronting Camilla, Charles summoned William and Anne into his private study. The king looked exhausted. The prince remained guarded, and the Princess Royal said almost nothing. Yet within that room, the future boundaries of Camilla's family were decided with consequences far greater than one cancelled meal. Charles still held personal authority over access to his private household, meaning the people and spaces directly controlled by the monarch. But William's influence had grown because security, succession planning, and the long-term stability of the crown increasingly depended on the future king. Anne understood both sides. She respected her brother's authority, yet she also knew personal loyalty could not be allowed to shape meetings involving official royal strategy. Charles sat behind his desk and admitted the cancellation had caused him real pain. The king had wanted the lunch to calm the family after weeks of strain. Instead, it had exposed a division in front of everyone. Still, he said Camilla had tried to bypass a decision already made, and accepting Tom at the door would have shown that pressure could defeat royal authority. William chose his words carefully. He told his father he did not want Tom humiliated, and had no wish to punish Camilla's children. The prince had never argued that they should disappear from family life. But he could not accept a system where an unapproved guest gained access simply by arriving at the right moment and forcing an emotional decision. Charles then asked the question that tested his son directly. Would William have cancelled the lunch too? William paused. The future king answered that he would have stopped the gathering earlier, before Tom reached the entrance. That would have protected the boundary without turning one man's arrival into a public rejection. Charles heard the criticism, but he also heard the loyalty beneath it. Anne finally spoke. During a private discussion with the king and the prince, she disclosed that a staff member had received a verbal message saying, "Her Majesty has approved an additional family guest." The wording mattered because it suggested Camilla's authority could override the approved list. Charles understood the danger at once. This was no longer only about his marriage. It involved palace procedure, meaning the rules staff followed when carrying out royal decisions. The king ordered that every invitation to a private senior royal gathering must now carry written approval from his office, no matter who requested the change. The decision was clear. So were the consequences. When Camilla learned of the new restriction, she understood that her attempt to include Tom had produced the opposite result. Her informal influence over palace access had been sharply reduced. The king had restored control on paper, but behind another closed door, Camilla was about to face the personal cost of losing authority in the very household where she wore the crown. Long after the others had left, Camilla returned to the dining room alone. The glasses remained untouched. The napkins were still folded, and the chair intended for the king had been pushed slightly away from the table. Nothing had been served, yet the room carried the weight of a family meal that had collapsed before it began. For the queen, the empty place settings became proof that her attempt to protect her son had instead isolated them both. Camilla had watched the invited family members leave quietly, or retreat to their private rooms. No one challenged Charles. No one tried to restart the meal. Palace staff were told only that the lunch had been canceled because of a private family matter, meaning a personal dispute the household would not explain publicly. That silence protected the monarchy, but it offered her no comfort. Tom Parker Bowles left without crossing the entrance. He sent his mother a short message saying he had never intended to cause a confrontation. Camilla read it twice, then locked her phone without replying. She wanted to defend him. She also feared that every word she wrote would sound like an excuse for a decision she now understood had gone too far. Camilla sat in the chair prepared for her and stared toward the empty place where she had expected Tom to join them. The queen had believed Charles would accept him once he arrived. Instead, she had placed her husband in a trap where kindness would look like weakness and refusal would look like cruelty. Anger still burned inside her. Charles had rejected her son at the door, and that humiliation could not be erased. Yet she also knew the king had already communicated the restriction to the household. By sending Tom anyway, she had tried to defeat a royal decision through emotional pressure. Catherine returned quietly to collect a personal item and found Camilla alone. The princess stopped, and neither woman spoke for several seconds. Then she said children remain children to their mothers, even when the rest of the world saw only grown adults making their own choices. Camilla asked whether William had designed the restrictions to reduce her family's place in royal life. Catherine answered carefully. The prince was protecting a boundary around official meetings, but protection without compassion could leave permanent emotional damage. She understood William's reason, yet she also understood the queen's fear. Camilla finally admitted the truth. She had told Tom that Charles would soften once he saw him. Hearing the words aloud changed them. What had felt like hope now sounded like calculation. Before Catherine left, Camilla asked her to deliver one message to William. She wanted a private conversation with him without Charles, aides, titles, or palace procedure between them. The formal battle had ended in restriction and humiliation. But one private meeting still offered the possibility of changing what the canceled lunch would ultimately mean. The turning point came without a council meeting, a royal announcement, or a room filled with advisors. William and Camilla met privately in a small morning room, with no aides present, and no prepared statements placed between them. For years, both had spoken through Charles, through protocol, or through the weight of their shared history. Now the future king and his father's wife faced each other directly, each carrying a grievance, and each knowing that one dishonest sentence could harden the family forever. Camilla had requested the meeting because she believed William's growing authority had shaped Charles's restriction. The prince agreed because he did not want one cancelled lunch to become a permanent feud between the king's wife and the next reign, meaning the future period when he would inherit the crown. Neither sat behind a desk. William closed the door himself, making it clear that this conversation would be personal, not procedural. Camilla spoke first. She told William the palace increasingly treated her children as risks rather than family. Becoming queen, she said, had not erased her role as a mother. Loving Tom did not make every visit political, and protecting him did not mean she wanted control over the monarchy. William listened without interrupting. Then the prince answered that he had never questioned her love. He questioned the way she had used that love as leverage. By sending Tom to the doorway, she had placed Charles in a trap where acceptance would weaken his authority and refusal would humiliate her son. Camilla's voice broke. She admitted she feared her family would slowly disappear from her life as William gained more control. The queen believed each new boundary was another step toward pushing Tom and Laura outside the royal world completely. William leaned forward. Exclusion had never been the goal, he said. But entitlement to sensitive royal spaces could not continue. Those rooms were used for security, succession, and senior household business, meaning decisions handled by the monarch and the closest working members of the family. Affection could not automatically grant access. Then William disclosed something Camilla had never heard. During a private conversation with Charles before the cancelled lunch, he had recommended a separate family supper where Tom and Laura could attend without official discussions or palace strategy. The suggestion had not reached her in time. Camilla fell silent. She realized she had misjudged both men. She agreed to respect formal guest restrictions, but asked that her children never be treated as sources of shame or hidden from ordinary family occasions. William gave her that assurance. The prince promised to speak with Charles and arrange a new gathering under clear boundaries. Inside the room, the family had finally found honest words, but beyond the gates, silence had already created a story far louder than anything the palace intended to reveal. By late afternoon, the cancelled meal was no longer a private royal disagreement. Broadcasters interrupted their schedules, photographers gathered outside palace gates, and a single unanswered question began dominating public conversation. Why had the king abandoned a family lunch moments before it began? The palace offered only a restrained statement, but the image that captured the nation was far more powerful: a silent entrance, an unused dining room, and a mother's son leaving without ever crossing the threshold. Palace staff confirmed the lunch had been cancelled, but refused to explain why. That silence created a vacuum. Within hours, speculation spread about Charles's health, a constitutional dispute, and a growing conflict involving Camilla's family. A constitutional dispute meant a disagreement affecting the duties, authority, or future operation of the monarchy. Even without proof, the lack of detail made every theory feel possible. Royal commentators understood how unusual the decision was. Private meals could be delayed, shortened, or quietly rearranged. Canceling one after senior family members had already arrived suggested something far more serious. Charles had refused even the appearance of unity, and that choice told the public that the disagreement could not be hidden behind smiles and polite conversation. Then one front page captured the entire crisis. Outside Victoria Station, an evening newspaper displayed the headline, "The Lunch That Never Happened." Beneath it appeared Tom Parker Bowles walking away from the palace entrance, while security officers remained behind the closed gate. The image turned a private rejection into a national symbol. Tom was not shouting. He was not confronting anyone. Yet his silence made the humiliation feel even sharper. Tom saw the front page on his phone and felt the embarrassment immediately. He called Camilla and told her not to defend him publicly. He warned that any statement from the Queen would deepen the damage between her and Charles. She wanted to protect her son again, but this time she listened. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates. Some defended the king's right to protect royal boundaries. Others sympathized with Camilla as a mother trapped between her husband and her child. The public debate was no longer about one guest. It had become a test of whether family affection should ever outweigh royal authority. A broadcaster then offered a more unsettling interpretation. The cancellation, he argued during an evening program, was not simply a rejection of Tom. It was evidence that Charles was preparing the palace for a stricter transition toward William's future reign. Charles responded carefully. He approved a brief statement saying the meal had been postponed after a misunderstanding involving private guest arrangements. The wording protected Tom from blame while quietly confirming that the approved list had been breached. Then the king made one final decision. He invited Camilla, William, Catherine, Anne, Tom, and Laura to a new family supper without advisors, official business, or disputed authority. The world had judged the closed door, but Charles was determined that the monarchy's final verdict would be delivered not through a statement, but around another table. 2 evenings later, the family gathered again. This time there were no strategic briefings hidden beneath the meal, no disputed additions to the guest list, and no one waiting uncertainly at the door. Tom entered with the king's direct invitation. Camilla watched him cross the threshold, while William stood beside Charles without tension or triumph. The cancelled lunch had exposed a painful fracture, but the second gathering would determine whether that fracture became permanent, or whether the family could finally understand the boundary it had revealed. Charles had deliberately separated the supper from royal business. No advisors attended, no official decisions were discussed, and every person entered as family rather than as part of the monarchy's operational structure, the working system, through which the crown handles duties, security, and official choices. The king wanted no confusion this time. Affection would be welcomed, but authority would remain protected. Charles personally greeted Tom Parker Bowles at the entrance. The monarch's welcome was courteous, restrained, and deeply meaningful. It showed that the earlier refusal had never been a permanent rejection of Camilla's son. The problem had been the broken agreement, not the man standing before him. Tom spoke before anyone sat down. He apologized for arriving without direct confirmation, and admitted that he should have understood the pressure his appearance would place on Charles. The king accepted the apology. He also acknowledged that canceling the entire lunch had caused public humiliation, even though refusing the unapproved entry had been unavoidable. Camilla then faced her husband with painful honesty. She admitted she had believed presenting Tom at the door would make refusal impossible. The Queen apologized for forcing Charles into a choice designed to weaken his resolve. Her effort to protect her son, she now understood, had briefly damaged the trust inside her marriage. William answered without anger. The prince made it clear that Camilla's children would remain welcome at ordinary family occasions, but no relative connected to the Queen, the heir, or any other royal would enter sensitive gatherings without approval. The rule would apply equally. No side of the family would receive special access. Charles confirmed the permanent distinction. Family events would offer warmth and inclusion. Official royal meetings would remain restricted to those carrying direct responsibilities for the crown. That arrangement protected decision-making without treating personal relatives as embarrassments to be hidden away. Charles pulled out Camilla's chair before taking his own place. She rested her hand briefly over his, while Tom sat across from William. The gesture did not erase what had happened. It showed something stronger. Responsibility had replaced resentment. What began as a humiliating rejection ended as a painful correction. Tom was not banished. Camilla was not stripped of her family, and William did not claim victory. Love could open a family door, but it could never override duty. Family would always have a place in Charles's life, but the crown would decide where that place ended. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.